Hey, how's it going? Thanks for joining me, whether you're live or watching this later for this weekly live stream. Um, Today, I want to talk about this idea that content is going the way of DevOps. This one's going to be a little think PC, but I'm going to show you a bunch of specific artifacts that make me think that this is happening. Just so you have a little bit of background, Ércule works almost entirely, not entirely, but almost entirely with developer tools, data infrastructure, AI, security companies, companies that are very deeply related to and thinking about how to deliver software. That's like not everything, but it's an important part of the considerations that some of our clients have. And my background is I was previously at GitHub. I was previously at a bunch of other very developer focused companies. And so I think through that lens a lot. I am not going to get everything perfect in this one. There's going to be some conceptual questions. It's a little bit, I'm kind of throwing things out there, but I'll be interested to see what everyone thinks. Okay, so what do I mean by this idea that content is going the way of DevOps? So first of all, let's just talk about what DevOps is very, very generally. It's a lot of things, but one thing it is moving from the idea of maintaining like individual, or it was sort of prompted by moving away from the idea of maintaining individual servers and taking care of each one, to managing fleets of servers and containers and huge numbers of these things in a way that gets you reliability, and where that can all be managed at scale by a finite number of people. So part of the development of this sort of way of thinking about infrastructure is prompted by this shift from, hey, I've got a server in a data center somewhere, to I'm managing much larger numbers of instances that are kind of serving my application, et cetera. And again, I'm not going to get all this exactly right. I'm kind of trying to compress it and highlight some parts and not others. And so there's a shift in the way of working to make this work. Because you're dealing with such large quantities of servers and infrastructure to deliver software and make software happen, make it do the things it's supposed to do reliably, you start needing to work in a way that's much more collaborative. You start working with much more complex systems, but you need to deploy changes to those systems in a reliable way, and you need to get good at deploying them. So there's an agility piece of this. There's also a piece of this that we want to continuously be updating the application that we have. We want new features to come out. We want to ship 500 times a day or whatever it is. So all of these things are a different way of working, where we move from a approach of there's an individual thing and I deployed it and I have to take care of it, to no, we're thinking about all this in terms of systems, and the system needs to work, and the system needs to have humans be able to work together effectively to improve its operation. We need to monitor it and make sure it's working. So we're moving from individual stuff to systems. Again, I'm grossly oversimplifying, but those are some of the things that I think about. So let me share my screen real quick, and I'll just flag some stuff here. Just search for DevOps. You're going to see IBM, lots of other big brands talking about this stuff. And what I'm interested in this is organizational culture shift that fosters coordination and collaboration. And in this case, it's between the development team and IT operations, but there's lots of other ways. Continuous integration and continuous delivery, smaller, faster updates, more frequent updates, et cetera. And then I'm going to show you this other piece about some of the results that you get when you implement this way of thinking about things. Faster, you release deliverables more frequently, you collaborate better, you deploy more rapidly, stuff is higher quality, it's more secure, etc. And one of the watchwords here, did I actually share those tabs to you? I don't know. Let me do it one more time. I'm sorry. Let's try it again. I think I forgot to hit an important button there, so you couldn't see what I was talking about. That's one article I was talking about, and I was highlighting all of these things here. Where is it? Culture shift, coordination and collaboration, continuous integration and continuous delivery. So that was one thing I was highlighting, and then the other thing I was highlighting was this tab, which is showing you some of the benefits of DevOps: speed, better collaboration, etc. And so the watchword, the mantra that you can think about is cattle, not pets, which is the idea that we're dealing with large fleets of things instead of very specific individual things. Okay. So why do I think that content might be going the way of DevOps? What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that I think that we are shifting, and frankly, marketing might be going the way of DevOps, but don't tell anybody I said that. Content is going the way of DevOps potentially, in the sense that we are moving from, there's lots of individual things that are being individually managed and are outside of a system, so to say, to something where we're publishing at scale, where people are more focused on the parameters of the system and the inputs to the system, rather than worrying about specific artifacts and things that the system produces. Not to say that that doesn't exist. Like in a DevOps model, there are absolutely people who are still writing code, thinking about interesting problems, et cetera. But the point is that you're making your baseline a lot more efficient so that those people can be freed up to work on interesting things instead of managing very specific stuff. So let me show you some things that make me think that this is happening. One of them, there is a piece here, by the way, which is just like analytics. And the Ércule app is really good for this. There's lots of other stuff out there that just lets you look at your content as a system. And so, we can talk about this a little bit more on another one, but it really is part of how we think. You're going to see the wrong tab here, but then I'll share this, which is we think when we're working with clients in terms of whole libraries, and we're thinking in terms of topics. Yes, we care about individual pieces, but we're thinking in terms of topics. And we're thinking in terms of what is the star content in our library? What is the declining content in the library? How do segments of the library work together? So that's actually part of what I'm talking about, though, because we work with a lot of clients who have thousands of blog posts. And the only way to think intelligently about that set is to think about groups and how those groups are managed. That's one piece. Another piece is understanding more of what content we need to write, what questions we need to answer at scale. So one of the workflows that we frequently run for clients is what we call our FAQ finder. And our FAQ finder kind of goes through and says, and I know you can't see this tab because I haven't shared it yet. And maybe I didn't even share the Ércule app again. That's what I was talking about with the Ércule app. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with me today. That's the Ércule app where we're talking about different segments here, stars and declining and whole libraries and stuff like that. Okay, so now let's switch over to this FAQ finder. And this is an example of, going out, and you can see all of the different sources over here of questions that people have, some kind of weird questions. These are all related questions from Google. That's why they're marked here as related questions. But we also have in our question bank stuff like what's coming from Reddit, what questions do people ask on Gartner, what people in user reviews, what are they interested about, et cetera. And that's part of this system as well, as this really big number of questions that people have about your product, about your industry, about your topics, about what they're trying to do, what your persona, and that is a much larger scale of things that we can now handle that we haven't been able to before. 5 years ago, it was like, hey, I found this interesting Reddit thread. Great, let's write an article on this. Now it's, here's the list of 1,000 questions that people have. Do we show up as answers for all of these? We're going to look at our LLM visibility statistics. We're going to look at other stuff like that. So there's like a scale issue here, and there's a systems piece. And then that brings me over also to AI workflows. So we spend a lot of time building and working on AI workflows. And like, here's an example. I'm going to do it right this time. I'm going to add this to the stage, and then I'm going to share this tab instead. Here's an example of a very simple AI workflow. I've shown this on this live stream before. It's called the content linter. And what the content linter does is it goes through every single article that you have on your blog or on your site. And it might do things like check for spelling mistakes, but it might also do things like what needs to be refreshed, or it might also do things like, does this match with our messaging? So there's lots of AI workflows like that can automate a big chunk of the work we do. Not all of it, but there's a baseline that you can get to with AI, like, hey, this is a type of, we need to do what is X. And okay, we need to do what is X for all of our time. Great. Don't have a person go out and write what is X. It's too expensive. It takes too long. ROI isn't there. But if we have a workflow that can do that, that's great. And that's a big set of outputs and inputs that, somebody's going to look at all the outputs, but it's very different from kind of handcrafting each piece. So I showed you one artifact, which is finding all these FAQs, another artifact, which is looking at segments, another artifact, which is building workflows to automate things more. Content automation is much more practical now than it was a couple of years ago. And all of these things kind of go back to, we're going to deliver with speed. We're going to deliver with quality, because you still need quality, and you can bake that into a lot of these workflows. We're going to be thinking about how we observe how content is working and looking at chunks of our library and topics instead of worrying too much about very specific pieces. So those are all things that, again, remind me of this shift from one thing to fleets of things. And then the people involved in this process are dealing with the more interesting problems of providing the grounding to the system, providing this thing that we have, which we call a competitive matrix. I'll show you this. This competitive matrix is basically product marketing in a database. You can see we got pros and cons and integrations and support and all this stuff for this particular set of products. And then over on the left, what you would see is each competitor here is in here, and we're pulling our basic product marketing information and we're putting it in a database, and then we're feeding it to the systems that then actually do the work. But the humans are in charge of setting the parameters, building the flows. And then the other thing is collaboration, which I pointed out on that IBM page and that Atlassian page. And here's the thing is, modern content has to be way more collaborative precisely because a lot of that baseline content is getting automated or will be getting automated. And so, yes, you will need to have a what is X for every topic that you care about. You'll need to have competitor comparison pages, all this stuff, because everybody's going to do that. You want to have it, and that's the baseline. And people are doing it now, are getting a little bit of an edge. But then once those are set up, then the humans can think about things like, hey, this is our marquee piece, and this really requires interviews, and it needs to be written by a human. It needs drama, it needs interest, it needs to connect to our POV, it needs data analysis, it needs people to talk to our customers, all those things that only humans can do. And in a DevOps sort of world, that's what the humans are doing. They're working on more interesting problems instead of maintaining lots of fiddly individual bits. And there's still a lot of that, right? Systems don't maintain themselves. But that's the thing. So when I say content is going the way of DevOps, what I mean is that DevOps, very reductively, is about a shift in the way of working to a more collaborative, faster deployment, higher quality model that works on larger scales to deliver a reliable outcome. And content is moving from content calendar, this piece, that piece, that piece. Each piece has a cycle time that takes 4 weeks, that, has unpredictable outputs and aggregate that, isn't, AI is not involved in, that all this stuff. We're moving from that to, an AI workflow handles that. And so when we publish a piece that doesn't match our brand anymore, or, we need to update something from 5 years ago, there's a big AI component that takes care of that for us as part of the system, which is part of what we build with clients. There is a collaborative piece where the humans are working on the harder problems that require individuals to take a piece of their perspective and put them together. There's a scale piece, which is, we're going to produce a lot more stuff, and we need a way of managing that as part of the system. There's a piece of what should the parameters of the system even be? What are the right topics? How do we know if those are connected to business outcomes? So people are going to move more toward that stuff versus lots of dealing with managing individual things and thinking more about the systems. So that is kind of it for today. There's lots of things that I can show you. I showed you some AI workflows. I showed you some competitive matrices. I showed you some some outputs, and I think that that's where we're heading. And if you're thinking about the way your content works, the more you can think of in terms of the system, the better. That's going to be a really important new capability. And that relates to conversations about content engineers and all kinds of things like that. But that's kind of where we're going, I think. Thanks for checking this out. Yeah, if you want to talk more about this, throw in a comment. I will definitely see it. Send us a DM, send me a DM. My email address is over there, I think. You should be able to see it. And yeah, have a great weekend. Enjoy fall. See ya.